I know my camera needs moved over a little bit.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Unlock community, and welcome to our Tuesday live stream. I'm here every Tuesday, 2 o'clock Eastern, and I teach people how to buy 1 to 3 rental properties per month on autopilot. So if that is something that you are interested in, you are going to love this training. So we have with us wholesaler extraordinaire and so much more than that, Michael Smith, who has actually been a fantastic deal source for my business the last couple of years. We've bought and sold each other quite a few deals. And so Michael has, how many deals are y'all doing now? 20 a month?
Yeah, we closed 22 assignments last month, 21 assignments last month.
Yeah. So you can hear just real quick, he's a large scale wholesaler here in Columbus, Ohio. And so I'm going to turn it over to you. Kind of introduce yourself. Let us know, how did you get into wholesaling and what is wholesaling?
Yeah, great point, guys. So nice to meet you guys. Once again, my name is Michael Smith. My company, Oasis Home Buyers. I got into wholesaling as I was on the flip side, just like probably a lot of you guys. I had a W-2 job, was just buying rentals, 1 to 3 a year, ranging from duplexes to fourplexes, for my first year or two, and then moved up to 5 units. And I had lost my job, started flipping, but I lost my job like prime COVID time, so 2021.
Okay.
And when you're flipping houses, late 21, early 22, it was like every deal sold 40 grand over ask, and you thought you were a genius. Unfortunately, I learned very quickly when the market shifted June of 2022, you weren't a genius. And I had some flips and found out my contractor actually wasn't that great. So I had to let him go and ran into some headaches. And I was like, I got to figure this out. And so we started wholesaling July of 2022 was my first assignment ever.
I did not know it was so recent.
Yeah.
I thought you'd been in the game much longer.
Yeah, August 17th is when I started marketing of 2021. And I was just buying the deals, and if I couldn't buy it, I just didn't do anything with it. I just let it go.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So when we're saying wholesaling, like what is wholesaling? Yeah, explain to the community.
Yeah, great question. So wholesaling is all it is an exit strategy of real estate. So wholesaling is selling off a contract to another buyer such as yourselves, and they're actually going to purchase it. As a wholesaler, very rarely do I actually purchase the property. I've done a few double closes for financing reasons and stuff like that, but for the most part, it is wholesaling itself is selling a contract of a property to an end buyer who is going to pay for the property at that point.
Let's talk about, okay, so you say sell a contract, like what is a contract? What, from a wholesaler's point of view, what goes into getting a contract?
Ooh, that's a fully loaded question there. So to round it up real quickly, I guess it's marketing, right? So we spend quite a bit of money on marketing, to the tune of $70,000 a month.
Y'all heard, wait, did everyone hear that? Let us know in the comments if you just heard that they spend $70,000 per month on marketing. Now, this live stream isn't to teach you how to wholesale. It is to learn how to work with a wholesaler, but we do want you to understand a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes. So, Mike, you're spending $70K. You have a whole team. This is payroll. Correct. This is, PPC, cold caller. What are you doing? High level.
Yeah, so we don't do cold calling or anything like that because we have found those deals can have a lot more headaches. So we do TV, radio, PPC, and Facebook's kind of what we stick to, and a couple referral deals. We don't do a ton of referral deals because we have so many inbound leads that we're trying to execute on. And then from there, it's just having conversations with these sellers and then finding a solution for them. And then from there, it's finding that solution and then finding the buyer that pairs well with that person's needs. A lot of times, I will be honest with you guys, we do put the seller's needs first because everything that goes with our outbound marketing, if we get a bad review or anything like that, it kills future lead flow. So if a wholesaler doesn't give you a deal, it doesn't mean that they don't like you or anything like that. It just means someone else might be better aligned with this seller, which in return could help them get a better review, which was going to help you too, because they'll get more deals down the pipeline later on.
I love that. And I think right now the market environment that we're in, there's fewer sellers and more buyers, especially here in Central Ohio. We have out-of-state investors flooding the market with
Yep.
tons of money. So from a buyer point of view, I mean, from a wholesaler point of view, and I mean this in the nicest way, but buyers a little bit are a dime a dozen, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of buyers. There's a lot of serious buyers, but there's a lot of wannabe buyers too. And if you guys can separate yourself from the wannabe buyers, because as a wholesaler, I mean, it's not uncommon for us. Like today, I think we've already got 150 calls of buyers, and I bet you over 100 of them have never done a deal before. So we got to learn to kick those people out really quickly. And what I tell people is, we're on track to do 240-ish assignments, give or take, this year.
Wow.
Over 150 of those will go to like 10 buyers. And it's not so much because it's the most money we'll get. It's so much about convenience. And as Jessie knows, in this industry, things do go wrong.
Yeah.
And when something goes wrong, whether it's right before purchase, right during purchase, or right after purchase, we got to be able to work together and figure it out. Because a lot of times it is the seller that causes these problems. Someone gets in their ear, or their emotion changes, or something else major happens in their life, and they think, oh, I've got this house, I can just go get $30,000 more for it. We all know that's not necessarily true. So sometimes you got to baby them through those things and hold their hand. And so we'd rather work with partners who are going to be there for those issues when they go wrong, because it's probably something close to 50% of our deals have an issue come up some point right before closing.
And y'all may be thinking, well, I bought a ton of deals off the MLS and there's never any issues. This is kind of the nature of off market. It's a little bit of the Wild West. A lot of the sellers, like, there's a reason that they are not selling through a licensed agent on the MLS. They want, like, what are common things you hear that a seller wants and that the buyer should be able to cater to? Fast close.
Yeah, fast close is a big thing. Another thing is, like, just convenience, right? They don't, I mean, a lot of times these houses are in rough condition. They're embarrassed. Like they thought, hey, I wouldn't clean it this week, and this week turned into 3 years, and it got much worse than they could ever imagine. So they don't want their neighbors to know about it. They don't want anyone to know about it. And so it's like learning to make offers off of photos and inspections. And then, like, hey, if you are going to do a walkthrough, make sure it's something major that's going to kill the deal, not an odor or something super minor like that.
I want to get into, like, the actual process, but like some other reasons that a seller would sell off market. And again, as buyers, we get good deals because we're buying situations. So it could be, and we just bought one from Mike that we're about to have to do a set out on. Lechner, going all the way to set out. They're not leaving.
I thought she'd take money for sure.
We did not take the money, and we went high. Did not take the money. So couldn't do a cash for keys. So this one, the tenants weren't paying for a year. A year they didn't pay the previous seller. So the seller sold, right, at a discount. And so we're getting good deals because we're buying situations. And so as the buyer's point of view, as Mike was kind of saying, you got to, like, roll with the punches, because it's not two licensed agents keeping everyone in their lanes. It's a little bit of kind of the seller's whim in some ways.
In a lot of ways, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's the seller's running off this emotional high or low, and we're trying to keep it, like, as neutral as possible. But they've got such a bad situation going on that they struggle with that a lot of the time. So
yeah. And again, it's a trade-off, because you get a discount on these properties because of the situation. The one we're having to go all the way to a set out, we paid $60K for a property in Central Ohio, like Central Columbus. It's 10 minutes to downtown, if that. You don't see those deals anymore unless you're willing to kind of take something on.
Yeah, and you bought that sight unseen, so you were definitely taking on some risk, and but it's part of the game, and a lot of times too, you are playing a little bit of odds too. Like, Jessie knows that neighborhood pretty well. She knows what her worst case scenarios, but she's batting on average that, hey, I bet it's gonna be somewhere in the middle.
And we inspected the exterior with kind of drive-by. So exterior looked great. So I'm taking a risk on the interior.
I think you're going to win on that one.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to be fine. Yeah, it's a good deal. So from a wholesaler's point of view, like you mentioned that or from an in buyer's point of view, you mentioned that majority, I think you said 80% of your deals are going to these top 10 buyers.
Mhm.
How would someone possibly get into that VIP list? I'm asking for myself.
Yeah. So there's two things to get into that list. One, you got to have worked with the wholesaler. A lot of times you're not going to get in unless you've done a deal, especially with someone who's done a lot of volume like us. Because the issue is when we start doing volume, it's amazing how many people try to go behind our back and steal a deal over $1,000 or $2,000. Whereas our top two buyers, I think we will make them both close over $1 million this year. So they're never going to shortchange us over $1,000.
Right.
And so that's the big thing is in today's unfortunate environment, we've got to protect who we send it out to. And if we've never met you, have done a deal with you, we don't know how you're going to operate. And so sometimes you just got to get a deal in your hand. And then once you're in or have someone you've done business who that wholesaler knows and trust, that can really help you vet out. I know Jessie, a lot of you guys are probably getting coached by her. So, man, when I have a coach who I know calls me and says, "Hey, this person's reputable, you can trust this person," that goes a long way. You sent us Anna. I think we've only done one deal with her, but she does a great job of underwriting. Great job of underwriting her deals and giving us a very solid number that she's going to stick to no matter what. And so, like, clear communication is huge too.
Yeah.
Very clear.
And so how priority given to buyers with cash, hard money? How are you kind of vetting your buyers?
We really don't care if it's cash or hard money. We want to know who the hard money lender is and have worked with them. There's the Chiavis of the world. There's Fund That Flip, Wildcat, all of those guys. We're pairing the situation again with the lender a lot of times, right? We don't always need cash. Most of our deals, we don't need cash on, actually. We're okay with hard money. But we know if this seller is going to be difficult, man, a Chiavi may not be the best solution here, right? A Wildcat might be a little bit different. So it's not that we care about the lender. We want to have worked with them or have really good conversations with them. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of lenders who don't do deals, which is amazing that they go through the whole process and just don't close a deal because how do they get paid? But there are lenders like that. So if we've never heard from them and they're just some random bank and through my network of people, no one's closed a deal with that lender, man, we're going to move off for that person. Even if that offer is 10, 15 grand higher, it would have to be like 50K higher and 25K EMD for us to risk that.
Yeah. And so you're saying that when a buyer is using hard money, and the lender is not vetted, there is a chance that their lender could pull out at the closing table, decide to not fund the loan for whatever reason they decide. And then your seller, who think you're closing today, all of a sudden you're not closing.
Yeah. And that becomes a headache for us because then one of two things need to happen is we got to, if we go out other traction, we got to get that person on board right away. Or B, we've got to go buy the deal to protect our image here. And that's never a fun thing because we have moved to a very specific niche buying list for us for what we want, just like I'm sure most of you guys have a very specific niche buying list. Yeah. And I really encourage you to have as niche as a buy box as possible because it lets us know you're serious and then we can find that and cater that to you. So we're not sending you every possible deal.
So if you guys are in our 90-day challenge or Rentals Made Easy Mastermind, you have access to exactly how to write your buy box. And we even have a little bonus on how you can frame that in a way that's easy to send to wholesalers. So Mike, if someone came to your team and was like, "Hey, here's my buy box. This is exactly what I buy." How does that operate from your point of view?
If someone that we've never talked to comes with that, we're going to be like, okay, this is amazing. One of two things is happening. A, they know what they're doing and they've done several deals, or B, they've invested in themselves to find a coach who has educated them to know how important that is. Either way, it's showing us that they're serious. And when we know you're serious, we're willing to work with you. It's so important that you know what you want. Because so many times buyers are like, oh, send me any deal. Promise you, we're not sending you that.
And also, you don't want any deal. Like,
No, it's a waste of
yeah,
time and
yeah,
energy. Like, protect your time. You guys all have things that are you have other things to do, whether that's family, W-2 jobs, or just relaxing. I know a lot of us, when we're trying to do this stuff, we don't get a lot of that time. So really dial in what you want. Networking with your agent that you're using, your contractor that you're using, just know what you want because it protects your time and allows you to come off as a little bit more serious and will beat out probably 50+% of the people reaching out to us wholesalers.
So you guys hear that? A tight buy box and an easy way to present it is going to put you above 50% of the buyers that are reaching out for their deals.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, super helpful.
Mhm.
I want to ask, we started by saying, what all you have put into building your wholesale business,
Yeah.
which is incredible. I will say Mike's level of wholesale is not common, right? There's not a lot of people doing this amount of business. So, but wholesaling can be seen as a very entry level strategy because you don't need a lot of cash. You're not actually closing the deal yourself. You're signing the contract. You can start by driving for dollars where you're just investing your time. Like, you can start in a way that is very entry level. Clearly that's not you, but what would you recommend for folks? Because, because it's entry level, there's a lot of really bad wholesalers out there.
A ton.
There's 10 bad ones for every one good one.
I agree.
I'm not trying to scare. I feel like I'm scaring everyone.
No.
But yeah. And so how would you recommend someone vets, buying? You're going to buy a contract from someone. That's a big deal. How do you vet that wholesaler?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways you can go about this. Is one, see if they have a website that you can go check. And that website's probably not going to have any like dispo reviews per se from other buyers, but it could have quite a few reviews from the sellers. And if it's positive experience on the sellers, that means they're doing a good job finding buyers, which means they're probably doing everything right. If it's all negative experiences, and what I tracking like the people that I think are really reputable, they all sit between like 4.4 and 4.7. Know that we're not going to please everyone in this business, but if they're above that range with 20 plus reviews or in that range anywhere close, man, that's probably someone that's doing something right and that I would trust what they do. Now, if they have no website, they have no reviews, and they've been doing it a long time, that would be a really red flag for me. Now, if they're new, maybe check with the title company and see how their experience has gone with them. Hey, are they getting to closing when a headache comes up? Because I promise you, it's not a question of if a headache comes up, it's when it's going to come up. Okay. How are they responding? Because some wholesalers, when a headache comes up, they will just run and they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that is not good for you because you're going to have 5K EMD down, or you're going to have made commitments with your lenders and all those things. And if you're all ready to go and your wholesaler's not, and they're not communicating to you, man, you're really hurting your relationships on your back end because you have relationships you got to protect too.
Yeah, I mean, you have your lender on the line, you have your contractor who's got a start date, everyone's ready to go. You maybe have insurance lined up. So for a wholesaler or seller to kind of flake out at the last minute, like, really puts a lot of people off their schedule. So where would you recommend finding reputable wholesalers?
That's tough. The only place I really know of, so two things. One, Facebook groups, I think is a quick way that most of us can do it. The other thing is I would Google sell my house fast for cash, see what comes up. And what you want to look for is the Google sponsored 3 at the top. So there's the $1 billion companies, the hedge funds, kick those out. Open Door, iDoor, anything like that. Kick those out and go look for the We Buy Houses in Columbus. I wouldn't click on that link because they're going to get charged $200 if I'm being honest.
I was about to say that.
But
I got so many people
yeah.
coming, like buyers coming in on my web form, and I'm like, you just cost me $200 to see if no, I'm not going to sell you a deal.
So over
Effectively different.
$1,500 of our PPC ad is buyers clicking on that thing. $1,500 a month. So don't do that.
Yeah, don't
We don't
do
get
that.
mad about it anymore, but I totally understand Jesse's pain about it. It is frustrating, but we have now realized it's just an expense that we have to budget for. So then you want to just Google that address somewhere else and then click on the non-Google advertised link. And two, when you call that and they say, hey, I saw you come up on an ad on Google and you didn't call that number or click on that link, they're going to be like, oh, this person's sophisticated and smart and they're going to respect me. I need to respect them.
Yeah.
That's what that instantly clicks for us in our team. Like, holy cow, they didn't cost us $200. They understand how this business works and they're going to respect us. Man, we need to do deals with them because that's what it's all about, is building the relationships so we all win, because this market's always shifting.
Yeah, always shifting for sure. So, okay, this is all, y'all. This has been great so far. We are nearing time. So go ahead and throw your questions in the comments if you have any questions for Mike. Mike, so say that you do all the work, right? You find the property, you put it under contract, you advertise that contract. And what would you say is like, how do you price a deal? And then how would a buyer interpret that price? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great question. So how we're pricing deals is we're looking at what's selling in the area for cash buyers. So we're doing our due diligence to see what cash buyers are buying in the area. That's where we try to price it. And a lot of times, just to be transparent, we are pricing deals before we've ever seen photos. So we're going off the seller. So we're pricing the deal, and then that's where it is. And hey, if we get this price, which is normally 10 to 15% more, hey, we're just going to move on and go quickly, especially if it's sight unseen. So what I would say is not always wholesalers are going to price correctly. So it's more important not to look at the price, because sometimes they price way too low too. It's more important to look at the deal and what you're willing to pay, and come with logic while you're doing that. If you're just looking for a $100,000 home run deal, man, those days I think are gone. Like, very rarely, as someone who gets 400 plus qualified leads and we're getting 30 to 40 contracts a month, we maybe get one a quarter. Maybe. I think we're averaging 4 a year.
And guess who's going to buy that? Michael Smith, not his buyers.
No, I assign those every time.
Do you? Hey.
Well, I keep 70 of it, but we buy the tight deals that no one wants. But what I'm getting at is we spend a ton of marketing. We have a brand and reputation, and we don't see that many of them. And so don't shoot for those. Tighten that buy box. Know what you can actually buy, and don't always be nitpicking price. Just look for what works for you and get it when you get it and move on.
Yep. And I agree. But I mean, at the same time, if I'm making a fair offer that works for me, but it's less than what you're asking, how should I proceed?
I think the best thing to do is make that fair offer, but tell them like, hey, I know it's lower than what you're looking for. Here's why I came up with this. And then give the reason, because maybe it's got a bad base. You're thinking it's got a bad basement. You know the neighborhood really well. They flood. You're budgeting $12K for some beams, some waterproofing, whatever that might look like for you. Well, then you can go, once you tell them that, they can go say, hey, actually, I've got proof that this basement's in good shape. Here it is. Does this work for you? And you can be like, oh, yeah, I can adjust my price $12K. Those kind of things. So like, give them the reason how you came to this price, so that you can go in and they'll come back to you and tell you like, hey, great, I noticed you had this in there. We don't need this. So say, hey, you can lump cosmetics in there as one, right? And because 9 out of 10 times it is, even if they say the bathroom's redone, you got to redo it anyway.
Yeah.
But then like the mechanicals, look at the mechanicals. Say, hey, I'm budgeting mechanicals here because a lot of times they do need done. But if we can go find out, hey, we don't need this mechanicals, well, there's 7 to 12K depending on the size of the house and what all needs to be done to those mechanicals that you were budgeting that no longer need to be done. So always detail how you came up to these numbers. Hey, and that could just look like I'm budgeting all cosmetics, mechanicals, roof from the Google images looks terrible. I noticed it's aluminum windows. So that's how I came up with my $75,000 rehab, whatever that is.
Right.
And then the wholesaler like, oh yeah, that Google picture's old. The windows were replaced. They're actually in really good shape. Here's a couple different photos. Do you think you can adjust your number a little bit? And that could be $4,000 to $5,000 right there. So that's why
Yeah.
you want to detail and not just throw out a number. Uh, How are you buying at 70%? Are you buying at 85%? Every neighborhood's different and every buyer's different. So if you have a high paying W-2 job and you can pay a little bit more, that's what I did. When I first started out, it gave me a huge advantage. And actually, just sold a lot of those rentals, and it was 12 doors I bought in 2018. I netted over $1 million buying them all retail, paying a little bit over ask at that point.
I believe it. I believe it.
Mhm.
You guys, case in point, real estate is a long-term game.
It
Even
is.
if the deal is not as slam dunk today, talk to me in 5 years. It
Yeah.
could be a whole different story. I mean, yeah, talk to me in 10 years. It definitely is going to be a different story. So I
Mhm.
love that. I love that. And one thing that I pulled out from everything you just said is like the negotiation back and forth. Everyone wants the deal to close.
Mhm.
That was one of my biggest takeaways with, uh, when I was wholesaling is that title, seller, buyer, myself, every single person, for the most part, unless the seller goes rogue, every single person is working towards the same thing. And
Mhm.
so having that open dialogue, that open conversation, and not being like weird or I don't know, just short with, oh, this is what I can pay. It's like, no, have a conversation about it.
Mhm.
I'll call Mike, which I don't know why you still take my calls. It should be someone on your team.
'Cause I like
I'll
talking
call
to
him
you,
and be
actually.
like, hey, I can only pay this, blah, blah, blah. And you will go back and forth. And it's like friendly. Sometimes, it gets a little spicy, but it always ends up like we want the same thing.
And it always does. And the only thing I think you guys could control is you're eventually going to have a deal go bad because of you, meaning you can't fund it on time, whether it's your wire isn't going to go through on time, your lender backs out, you thought you had 30 grand coming to you from XYZ source and it doesn't. Just communicate to that. No one's going to hammer you if you communicated the day you find out.
Yes.
What they're going to do is, hey, I found this out 5 days ago and I thought I was going to solve the problem and I didn't. Man, because there's been times where a buyer backed out and we've worked with them or they ran into issues. We'll just buy it for them and say, hey, when can you refinance us out? And we're going to charge a little bit of money for that, but it's still a win-win for everyone. That's all we want. We want to close this deal and we just want clear communication. And now if you come to us in 3 days in a row, something goes wrong with your financing, we're going to look into some other issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we understand like you can close 5 good deals and something goes wrong completely out of your control. I just had a lender the day of before closing, and they didn't even call me. An employee who had got let go called me and said, "Mike, they're not closing this deal. I'm so sorry." And I was like, "What?"
Your own deal or for a buyer?
I was buying it myself.
Oh,
Well,
man.
we had 2 other deals in the pipeline too, but those were like a week away. So we were able to call them and say, "Hey, we know from a unnamed source that this is going to happen. We need to get you a new lender." And we were able to work it out.
Yeah.
So things go wrong on all areas of this thing. It's all about communication,
Totally.
especially if it's something that is on your side that's going wrong.
Yeah.
Just call the wholesaler. Hey, and I would do a call. Hey, I'm so sorry. My lender just let me know that they're not going to get the funds for an extra 48 hours. I just can't close this thing. How can we come up with a win-win situation?
Yep.
If you call me and let me know that, I can handle it on my end and I'm not going to charge you anything. Like, I can handle that. What I can't handle is the day of closing
The day of closing.
or
Yes.
even like 9 o'clock, especially when you knew all day.
Yeah.
The day
Yeah.
before. So just communicate to it. It's never as bad as it seems. And we respect the communication more than the deal not happening because
And
it
I
goes
think
a very long way.
I think that's where like people new to working with wholesalers get so caught up is that you think it has to be black and white, and there's a lot of gray area in
Mhm.
there, and it all is just the relationship you have and how you communicate. And even if
Mhm.
it's your first deal with the wholesaler, you can build a relationship in 30 seconds on the phone. Your
Mhm.
relationship starts. You don't have to have years and years and years of past
No.
history to show that you are a capable buyer.
Yeah, just do what you say you're going to do. Even if you know nothing or have never done a deal, tell them that. And then when you talk the next time, just get on the phone when you say you're going to get on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. So there are some questions in the comments. Connie is asking, so this is kind of a big question, is what are
Yeah.
some of the like top ethics and violations of and red flags? Because there are quite a few states, and I have this
Mhm.
question teed up, is there's quite a few states that are outlawing wholesaling. And so kind of a lot of it is because of these ethics issues
Mhm.
that sellers have seen. So what are some of those issues? And then kind of how do you see that affecting wholesaling industry overall?
Yeah. So two things that just happened to me is two other wholesalers reached out to me saying, "Hey, I've got this deal." Two different deals. One of them never had the deal, and we found that out. Like we had signed a JV agreement, everything with them. We were going to take this thing down, and then we're like, "Hey, we haven't seen the contract yet. You were supposed to send it over. It's like 3 days ago." He's like, "I can't find it." I'm like, "You can't find it? Like,
Wow.
just type in how'd you get it signed?" He told me. I was like, "You never had the contract, did you?" I said, "You were hoping to get the contract after we signed it. Totally illegal. Like you can market the contract, but he didn't have a contract. He can't do that." So it's things like that. And he was harassing the sellers at that point because he had a buyer on the hook and he was looking to do that. That's a no-no. On the flip side, I have this young kid and I appreciate him. Like he's 19, his hard work and ethics that he's putting into us, but he doesn't understand construction costs. Like he's 50 to 80K off every single deal.
Yeah.
Like he's blocking up all these full gut rehabs and thinking that he's going to move them, but he's like 50K rehab. I'm like, this is 100 minimum.
Yeah.
And like, that's if things go well. Like, good luck finding a buyer in today's market who's going to underwrite this at 100. They're going to underwrite it at 140. And so, unfortunately, they hear on the internet that, hey, wholesaling's get rich quick. You can buy a Lambo, whatever. And that doesn't happen overnight. You got to know your numbers, and they don't. And so they're locking these up, and people think their house is going to sell. And then they're putting their house in contract for 30, 60, 90 days. And then they're not communicating to them when they know they have a problem. They're waiting to the last very minute, hoping a unicorn falls in their lap. And that doesn't happen that often. And so what happens is they've got to go back to these homeowners. And a lot of times they're just ghosting these homeowners. And homeowners are trying to get a hold of title, and no one can talk to the original wholesaler.
And they have their stuff like packed in a U-Haul.
They have it
They're
packed.
like
They've
planning
made
their
other
lives around the
arrangements.
sale.
Like we recently just had a deal that we didn't close on time, but we wrote her a check for $5,000 before we close. We're like, hey, here's $5,000 so you can pay your new apartment lease, so you don't have any of that. A lot of wholesalers aren't doing those things, and it wasn't necessarily our fault. It was some miscommunication with the buyer. Well, I'm not gonna say it was the buyer's fault either. So we just wrote the check for $5,000. We're like, hey, we're gonna front you this $5,000. That solves those problems.
Right.
Like simple stuff like that solves a lot of these ethic problems. But the issue is people just become turtles and tuck their heads and think things are gonna go away, and that leaves the seller in a very bad position. And then they're going to city officials. And
I attended a hearing here in
Mhm.
Columbus about the future of wholesaling, and I would say there was maybe 3 people pro and another 30 who stood up and were anti. And states are changing. So,
Mhm.
I mean, what do you see the industry overall?
Man, I think it's gonna get tough. And I think it will get tougher for wholesalers and end buyers, because I do think in the next 5 years, I think wholesaling will have some major regulation in every state. I'm not saying it's going to be banned in every state, but I'd be shocked if it wasn't banned in most states based on what's going on in South Carolina, Oregon, and I think Pennsylvania now. And all that means is there's going to be a transition period where it's going to be really hard. But right after that really hard time, there's a really easy time. And so what I would say to you guys is, guys like me are just going to start buying these things. The issue is we're going to have to buy them so deep to sell them to you guys. But there might be a period of time where you're going to have to help your wholesaler out and pay a little bit more. But as the market shifts 3 to 6 months, once these sellers realize, oh my gosh, half the buyers are gone, because it's the wholesalers who find most of these deals.
Yeah.
The price expectations will kind of level off and be in our favor, because the barrier of entry just went up, because you have to buy the deal to sell to someone else. And that will eliminate so many wholesalers that better deals will come to investors if that were to happen. It would just be an extra step. And on the front end, it will cost a little bit more. But once it all evens out and sellers realize, oh my gosh, I don't have that many choices anymore, prices will drop and you will have some opportunities.
And I'm sure transactional lending would come out of the woodworks.
Yeah, and there's a ton of that coming, a ton of that. Yeah. So that is one way around it too. It's just that there's going to be a short period of time where there's going to be some opportunities. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult.
Well, thank you, Mike, so much for your insight on kind of how the industry works, how us as end buyers can kind of capitalize on some of these deals and on your hard work. And we're gonna post your contact info in the comments.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say my Instagram is probably the best place to
Sure.
catch me.
Yeah.
And I do post quite a bit there. So it's just real estate Mike 02. If you guys shoot me a message, I do have appointments all day and I do pick my daughter up at 4 today. So I may not get back to you today, but I will make sure I get back to you tomorrow for sure.
Okay, awesome. Real estate Mike 02.
Yep, 02. Yep.
02. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you guys so much. And if you love this and you want to learn so much more, I am hosting a workshop actually directly after this. So at 3 o'clock Eastern, Lizzie is going to post the link in the comments. If you are watching on YouTube or Instagram, check our bio to join that workshop and would absolutely love to have you there. I'm going to teach you how you can work with wholesalers. And so, I mean, this is a very small part of what I teach when helping people build that rental business, buying 1 to 3 rentals a month. And so if you want to learn how to scale up like that, join the workshop. Mike, thank you. And we will post your contact and you're about to get a bunch of Instagram followers.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys and reach out if you have any questions and would love to help you guys get up and get in rentals because I do think it is a great way to freedom.
Oh, so much freedom. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right. See you guys.